To other trips where Dad became part of an extended family. Is Melanie here? Yes. Melanie, you stand up, please.
Sorry.
The new routine. Just so we understand the flow of events, I'm going to do a quick slideshow, just giving us a brief summary of Dad's life. That will be followed by Jake Cricker, and then Michelle and Patrick, and then after that, if anybody would like to say a few words, please, at any point afterwards, just put your hand up and, yeah, you've got something to say. This is the best step. Thank you. Dad will always be remembered as a loving husband, a father, a brother, a grandfather, a friend, and his achievements will be long remembered. We will never forget that Dad's successes he achieved must be recognized as having been facilitated by the dedicated love and support he received from Mom. So we're going to go into the slideshow now, and I think your attention will move towards the projector and where the action is.
Do you want to move?
You can be assured that when Dad left us, he was flying first class. He was a lifetime platinum member of SAA. Dad's early years, born in 10th of September 1935. Dad always wanted a baby brother, and his wishes were granted 8.5 years later when his brother Peter was born. Peter? From an early childhood, we can start to see the signs of Dad's personality, the mischievous, playful side of his character, his talent for shooting, his talent for posing and being the center of attention. Dad spent his senior high school years at Grey High PE. He was a school prefect and played first team rugby in 1952. Dad got his school colours for shooting in 1951 and gold medals in 1950, 1951, and 1952. In 1951, Dad was congratulated by the then Minister of Defence, if anybody can remember, F.C. Erasmus. Dad often reminded us, that he pushed a few noses out of joint by winning competitions as a much younger competitor. This is one of Mom's favorite pictures of Dad. Even though it's a bit grainy, you can clearly see his character developing. This needs explaining. I believe that this is a picture of Dad practicing a scene from Swan Lake Ballet called The Dying Swan at Pitt's Beach. And I can tell you I am no expert, but I recognize talent when I see it. And I think the medical fraternity are lucky that there were no talent scouts around that day. Otherwise his career might have taken a completely different direction. He played and enjoyed his rugby very much. He played in the UCT first team in 1955, and for those who don't know, he played lock. Dad's medical graduation in 1958, with distinction, no doubt. Dad and Mom got married in Cape Town on the 9th of January 1960. They were married for 63 years, an incredible feat. Michelle was born first in 1961, with many happy days spent at Museberg Beach. Mom and Dad bought a house in Eastern when we kids were in our early childhood. We, as a family, had many happy summer holidays there. The Saunders, who were close family friends, also had a house at Eastern. As a result, we became very close. Jane and John Saunders are now regarded as part of our extended family. At Aza, Dad and Uncle Stuart were known as skilled oarsmen in a small dinghy in the South Atlantic, often outwitting the locals in finding the holes to capture the lurking crayfish. And yes, that is a real crayfish that Mike's holding, not Jurassic Park. Michelle learning to windsurf. Ron Dean in Rondebosch was our home for over 40 years, with many happy memories. Mom and Dad did a lot of entertaining. Fun times were had by all. The Morris was bought when Mom and Dad lived in the UK, and it came back with them to SA. The family car that would transport all 6 of us for years to Highland Home, Mom's family home near Tarkestad. A good 12-hour journey, you can only imagine. Dad made every effort to watch us 3 boys at our Saturday rugby matches. The surgeons and the farmyard pigs. Dad's interest in the pig as a surgical research animal and his subsequent interest in liver surgery started at the University of Bristol in the UK. The conditions of Dad's return to SA was that he could set up a big research laboratory with Stuart Saunders and Dr. Rosemary Hickman. This was the start of Dad's spectacular career in liver research, which eventually led to him being internationally recognized as one of the world's leading researchers of portable hypertension. Dad and Stuart were young mavericks pioneering their research, very much like entrepreneurs as I am today. They would recall many funny stories years later, which was a great source of amusement to us. For example, they had to make friends with pig farmers to find ideal models for their research. They had to set up a pig-friendly lab, no small task at Curtis. Many nurses were shocked and surprised to see a pig on the operating table with 2 young students at work. One famous pig, called Percy, had a liver transplant. He wasn't expected to live beyond 14 days, but he failed to oblige, which stimulated a lot of international interest. At the time of the operation, he only weighed 64 pounds, and on his death, 2 years later, he weighed 700 pounds. Stuart and Dad put his death down to obesity, nothing to do with the liver transplant. John, the surgeon. Dad became the head of surgery at UCT from 1981 to 2000. Dad traveled extensively with visiting professorships at no less than 43 countries. Dad had enormous capacity for fun. He ate well, laughed a lot, and was always front and center of all the fun. Dad received no less than 30 honors and awards. Some were professional and some were fun. Dad had many special professional appointments, most notably an elected member of the UCT Council from 2004 to 2012. Dad retired 22 years ago, but remained an active member of many boards. It is at this time he took up golf, an active member of Mowbray, where he had a healthy handicap. He was a good sport. I enjoyed playing with him, Mum and Dad, for many years, and it was on the golf course that Dad indirectly taught me grit and determination. His strength of character, his firmness of purpose were more important than the actual outcome. Today, our family has grown. Their support, security, and unconditional love continues within us all. I end with a quote from a WhatsApp message received from Dad's doctor, a long-time family friend, someone in whom Dad deeply trusted. Thank you. Now I'll call up Jake Cricket to say a few words.
Thank you, James, for the kind invitation and the opportunity to pay tribute to a remarkable man who was an inspiration to many and influenced the careers and the lives of those who worked with him. The words of Isaac Newton are especially appropriate and apt because we who worked with him, me and Flip, were able to see further while standing on the shoulders of a giant. How does one effectively pay tribute to someone who was a surgical icon and larger than life in our lives? I remember the very day and the hour I first met John. I was a fifth-year medical student. It was our first bedside tutorial in surgery, and in strode the professor of surgery. John didn't walk, he marched. He had long strides, he was tall, he was dignified and imposing. And I thought, wow, this is what a professor of surgery should look like. This happened 53 years ago, and that encounter made such an indelible impression on me that I remember that interaction as if it was yesterday. Little did I know then how privileged I would be that 10 years later, John invited me to join him and Flip as a consultant in the liver surgical team, an invitation that changed the course of my career and my life. You heard from James that John was in high school at Grey. He often reminded me about his shooting ability. More than once. He entered medical school at UCT in 1953 and graduated with honours in 1958. He played first in rugby, and you saw the picture. It was a formidable team, that team of 1955, because if you look at the photograph that James showed, there was Louis Babro sitting in the front row. He played in the 1937 Springboks to New Zealand when they won the series. The captain of that team was Dick Lockyer, who scored the winning points against the All Blacks in a famous test in 1960 at Ellis Park. And sitting next to him is Brian Pfaff, who played Springbok fly-off in 1956 when they beat the Australians in Sydney. So it was a remarkable team, and I know that picture hung on the wall in the room when Flip and I visited John 4 weeks ago. After his internship in 1959, John joined Chris Barnard for 12 months in the lab to do research on heart transplantation. And the next year, for 6 months, he worked as a cardiac registrar when he had to assemble the heart-lung machine every morning, put the patient onto bypass, open the chest. Chris would come and do the surgery. John would close the chest, take the patient off the bypass, and then look after the patient at the bedside the entire night. So those were really tough times, and Chris was a very demanding master. John was awarded the CHM with distinction, that's the Master of Surgery degree, in 1964 for work he did on hypothermic extracorporeal perfusion. And the same year, 1964, as James showed, he qualified as a surgeon, but he received the Douglas Gold Medal as the top surgeon of the in the exams. He then went to, the family moved to the UK, to Exeter, and then to Bristol, where he was an early pioneer of experimental liver storage and transplantation. An interest he brought back to Cape Town, where it flourished under his guidance. He became co-founder of the MRC Liver Research Centre in 1973 with Stephen Saunders, a position he shared later with Ralph Kirsch. And that resulted in a highly productive and collaborative research partnership that lasted for almost 30 years. John was appointed the head of the Department of Surgery at the University of Cape Town at a relatively young age of 45. Leading by example, he transformed a good department inherited from his predecessor, the formidable Professor Young Low, into a superbly organized, highly productive, and outstanding department, equal to the finest in the world. He established a surgical research program which attracted international fellows to the liver training mecca in Cape Town. Many of these returned home afterwards, and they spread the gospel, according to Terblanche. This prodigious output from a strong and stable research team, which included Rosemary Hickman in the lab, Flip doing endoscopy, Del Khan transplantation, Heidi portal hypertension, Anwar Moore is here, studied mucus, and this elevated the importance of the unit's work to an international audience. John was an ardent ambassador for South Africa and a popular and much in demand speaker at international meetings for over 2 decades. Many benefited from his wise counsel, and he took great pride in the successes of his protégés. The national and international esteem in which he was held was reflected by the award of 10 honorary fellowships, which is absolutely remarkable, probably unique, from each of the 10 English-speaking colleges and surgical societies in the world. He also held high office as president of 9 international societies and associations. John will be long remembered by many as the consummate clinician, researcher, academic, but also as a kind and generous teacher and mentor. His legacy is set to endure, and we remain indebted to him for his vision, his values, his vigorous leadership, his innovative scientific contributions, and the standards of excellence he practiced and demanded from us. His influence was immense and will last long beyond his physical presence. His continued love for his family was a cornerstone in his life, and was a constant supporter of his career and a gracious hostess to the many visitors, ranging from distinguished international visitors to junior trainees who were invited to dine at the Terblanche home. The thoughts and sympathies from the Department of Surgery go to Anne, Michelle, James, Michael, Christopher, their spouses, and their grandchildren. Thank you.
say a couple of words.
Hi, I'm Michelle, John's daughter, and I just want to thank you all for joining us here today. You all, every one of you is special to the family and Dad in particular. Our family and extended family are scattered all over the world, and unfortunately some aren't able to be here today. They all pass on their sympathies and condolences on this sad day. We are in awe of all our dad achieved as an educator in his research, all the lives he saved, and all the doctors and colleagues he helped to work with. But most importantly today, we remember the special times with our dad. At Esterfontein in particular, where we had many summers by the sea, where he taught us to body surf, to windsurf, and catch crayfish. He loved people, a good time, and having fun. Dad expected a lot of himself and a lot of all of us. And he was very proud of our achievements, including capping me for 2 degrees at UCT. He was so full of himself, but also funny and kind, and all under his bossy exterior. He loved to tell his stories, long stories, John stories, as my kids Alice and Tom would tease him, rolling their eyes, but enjoying them all the same. So Dad loved his family with a big heart, and it is with so much love that we say goodbye. I will miss him dearly.
Thank you, Michelle. Now, Patrick, come and say a few words.
Thank you. I'm good. I think my voice is probably loud enough for everybody here. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Good.
The Annesley Terblanche combination voice.
Something like it. A lot of what start off first of all. Good afternoon to you. Lovely to see you. And lovely to see so many people coming to pay respect to a wonderful man. We've heard a lot about John, we know a lot about John, and even I've heard a lot today as well. Caroline, my sister, oh, I can't say that. John and I had an argument. It's Anne, not Caroline.
She has 3 names.
We are here as friends and family to celebrate the life of John. And you must forgive me, I am going to repeat of some of what's been said just now, but this comes from our side to you and your family. John, loving husband, father, grandfather, and friend, who dedicated his life to his passion in the world of medicine, culminating, as we've heard, in his professorship and being recognized throughout the world, as you all know. He also touched each one of us here in his own special and individual way. That's why we're here, for which we give thanks. The intensity and dedication he gave to his life work was supported each and every day by the love of his family. Think a moment. The refuge, and you all know about it, I can see it in your eyes, the gentlemen and the ladies, the refuge he must have needed from the stress of each day, he found in Anne's deep love and understanding. A loving home filled with joy of children. Intrinsic to this are trust, compassion, and deep love, together with a full and complete understanding of John and his passion for human needs. Behind every successful man is a successful woman. How could Anne know and understand John's needs so well to create a balance in his life that is so badly needed by all of us? Well, let's start at the beginning. Anne trained and qualified as a nurse at Grace Hospital. I hope I'm not taking up too much time.
No.
Anne trained and qualified as a nurse at Grace Hospital in Pietermaritzburg and began her nursing at Grootersdorp. John was working on B floor at the time, which is where he met Anne, and I quote, somebody here will recognize this quote, John was in his 5th year, working on the same floor. Some mates persuaded him to take Anne to a dance. Meanwhile, after vetting her, the vetting had to take place first, and then John took her to a dance. And that was that. Not even the fact that John literally swung on a chandelier that night did it deter her. He proposed on a foggy morning on the road below the cable car, and they were married when he qualified with only a double bed to their name. And that was the start of their 63 years of special and deeply loving married life. A synopsis of the early days. The family started, as we heard, Michelle was born in Cape Town, James and the twins in the United Kingdom. They returned home, spent time with John's parents before settling in Rondine. And so began the wonderful family bond we see today in love shared. There are many memories and stories, as you have said, Michelle. I was up in the north, but on our visits I was always taken by the visible love and respect Anne and John had for each other. The family love of children, helping in the home, be it caring for the younger siblings or just showing family togetherness. I remember meeting up with John and Anne at Kids Beach, and you talked about the Mini. We went on holiday one year. On leaving, James and Michelle were on the back seat. And the other two in their carry cots were squeezed on top of the luggage into the back of the Mini. And John firmly closed the doors. I was absolutely amazed. But they got home. I remember Azafontein. In the days when it was still a small fishing village. And thank goodness, because the crayfish were plentiful. Being a firm plotlander, I was instructed in the art of netting for the crayfish and keeping myself afloat, much to the amusement of the younger members of the family. And those crayfish, they were big ones, were emptied into the bath, remember? And then of the cottage, and then you did your magic. Lovely. They travelled to many parts of the world with the demands made on John in his professional capacity. What fun they must have had together. What stories they must have to tell us all. Through the ups and downs, the family bond, love and togetherness never faltered. Rondine was always a warm and welcoming family home, made so by both Anne, John and the children. We often, while on holiday, we enjoyed good wines, the whiskey flowed freely, together with superb meals prepared and presented by Anne. ably assisted by the children. Needless to say, it was accompanied with vigorous, fun-filled and challenging conversation, and always enjoyed by all. Also, Anne found time in her busy life to study fine art, which resulted in exhibition. It was also an expression of her love for, amongst others, nature, flowers, animals, which in her words, combined in the mysteries of life. I was shown one of her special love paintings of her drawing of the back of a reclining John. How many of you have seen that? Where he found the time to pose, I have no idea, but it's there. I want to share some thoughts about John from the family. Just some little things. Never be afraid to ask for something in life. If you get it, great. You're better off. But if not, then you haven't lost anything anyway. Words like perseverance and resilience come to mind. Independence. Achieve what you believe in. Don't be frightened to ask Dad for advice. I have no words for all he and Mom have given and done for me in my life. You fix the things you know you can, and leave the ones you know you can't. Having a place to go is a home. Having someone to love is a family. We are each of us angels with only one wing, and can fly away only by embracing each other. What stood out for me on first meeting John as a much younger brother was the love, joy, respect and happiness that shone through both of them when they were together, and has remained throughout their married lives. This leads me to today. I have seen their children, especially in these past days, express their love in many thankful and kind actions where words are not necessary. My heart knows, Anne, that you are in the best of loving and caring hands of your family. What I will remember most of John's achievements, as we all will, the giving of his knowledge to the betterment of mankind, which gives hope and healing to so many. The strong family unity and love. And the theme of love has come through in all that I've talked about today. The epitome of love, expressed by John for Anne in his passing moments. That is the epitome, and I thank you, dear sister, for sharing those precious moments with me, and you will know. Love you. Thank you.
Is there anybody who would like to say a few words or has a short story to talk? If you don't mind coming forward, we are having this video tape so we can send it to family around. So please, if you can just stand here and say a few words, and we'll hold that for you.
Thank you. I'm JP van Niekerk, and John and I were close colleagues in our different areas and good friends. In fact, our medicine connection started with John's first year at medicine, where Annette, my wife, was in the same class, and I followed a year later. I'm not here to talk about John's academic and other achievements, but one comment about his CHM, which sounds like a master's degree, a master of surgery. In fact, it's what we call a red gown degree, which is the equivalent of a doctorate, just for clarity. But I just wanted to make 2 points about his retirement. The first thing was about his golf. And I wrote a story about excellence, and with John's permission, I explained why he would never ever be a good golfer. The second thing about retirement is John and Anne's involvement with the Grootskier Probus Club, of which they were founder members, and shortly John was the president. What else do you expect? And ran it like he ran everything else, precisely and very well indeed. And they were very much loved members of Probus and attended until John found it difficult to do so. Yesterday, I spoke very briefly about John at Probus, and I finished this way. It was also about a wife. And I said that behind every successful man, there is an astonished wife.
I've got a, believe it or not, a golf story to tell you. If I can paint a scene for you, it was in November, and the exams were due, and these are the final exams, and this is the big one. If you don't pass your surgery exam, you're finished. And the oral is the last exam that you write. And of course, everybody was very, very worried about this. And you sit and you wait the whole day, and eventually they call your name and in you go. Now, I had a little advantage in that I used to organize the staff-student golf matches. And John used to organize the staff to play in the matches. So I had that little contact with him, but it wasn't much. And I was, in a way, I was hoping that I was going to get him in the exams, because you always get a local professor and you get an external professor. And I walked into the room, and the first thing that John does, which was just wonderful, he welcomes me, he shakes my hand, and he says, "Hello, Mr. Smith, soon to be Dr. Smith." Which sort of put me at ease, thinking, well, perhaps I've already passed, because you don't know. Anyway, he sits me down and he says to Professor, the external professor, Professor Terblanche, I think his name was, from Pretoria, and he said, "Professor, would you like to ask him a question?" And Professor Terblanche says, "Yes, grab one of those jars there and let's talk about it." Well, I was sweating so much I couldn't lift the jar. So I asked Professor to lift it for me. Anyway, I managed to talk about it. It was quite successful, and then he asked me another question, which was successful. And then he turns to John, and he says to John, "Professor, would you like to ask Mr. Smith a question now?" And John, with a wide grin on his face, and now remember, this is our last oral before the results are due next week. And he says, "Yes, I've got an important question. Would you tell me how to play out of a bunker?" There was stunned silence. Professor Terblanche looks at me, and I said, is that a true question? And he said, "Oh, absolutely." So I demonstrated open stance and open, the whole thing, and they sat back, and there was a smirk and a smile on their faces. They looked at me and said, "Okay, you're out of here, enjoy your weekend." And then about a month later, I ran into John at a party. And I said, "John, please tell me, what was that all about?" And he said, "Well, let me tell you, you weren't in the top 10. And you were certainly not in the bottom 10. So what the hell? We were going to have fun. And that's the great guy that he was.
Thank you.
I need to have a quick word just on behalf of the crowd who normally assemble at this time, this day of the week, at Pinewood Arms. And of course, this is something with which John was always very familiar, particularly in his pre-COVID years. And he was a very diligent attendee, and he always participated in all the festivities that took place on that occasion. So, on behalf of Pinewood Arms and all those who gather, in fact some people might be gathering as we speak, I offer a toast in recollection to our good friend, and we wish him well. Thank you.
Yeah, John. Is there anybody else that would like to say a few words? Then I think we will mingle and chat amongst ourselves. And thank you for all of you for coming. But please don't go. Have another drink, another canapé.
And there's lots of food.
And there's
Please
lots
stay
of
and eat
food.
it.
But thank you for coming. Stay as long as you can. Thank you.